Hello, my Z followers, and welcome back to The Question, where you have the questions and I have the answers. And today I'm going to be reviewing / analyzing the new West Side Story movie. So if you are new, please be sure to subscribe, hit the notification button so you never miss a new video. If you're not new, please like, comment, and share. I love to interact with you guys. Without further ado, let's get on with the video. So West Side Story is a very popular musical written by Stephen Sondheim. It first debuted, I believe, in 1956, and it's very well known for its 1961 movie starring Natalie Wood and Rita Moreno as Anita. That basically spearheaded her career. That's what she's the most known for, and she made a cameo / had a minor role in this new movie. And there was been a lot of controversy and opinions about the new movie. It looked really good to me because I am hypercritical of musical movies. So I finally watched it, and overall I thought it was really good. This is, I'm gonna say not a popular opinion, but it's not an unpopular opinion. It's pretty divided, actually, 50-50 on this opinion. I thought it was better than the 1961 version. And I will go in depth as to why, but a lot of fans, especially older fans, still think the 1961 version is better for their own opinions, and I'll get into those eventually. So why do I think that this version of the movie is better? First of all, the ethics involved. The 1961 movie had a lot of ethical issues surrounding it. Mainly that the plot of the movie is supposed to be an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, but told with race relations in 1950s New York, namely between the gangs, the Jets and the Sharks. The Jets are white, specifically I believe in the original musical Greek or Irish, and the Sharks are Latin American, specifically Puerto Rican. And the ethics issue with the 1961 movie is that they cast no Latin American actors for the Sharks and other Puerto Rican characters, aside from Rita Moreno. They instead cast white actors and just painted them a darker brown, including Rita Moreno. Rita Moreno, who actually is from Puerto Rico, they painted her darker as well to make her look more ethnic, and it includes absolutely no Spanish and no hint towards Puerto Rican or Latin American culture, which I think because of that, and because they don't make a point to cast Latin American actors in the Broadway versions either, because it's still an ongoing show on Broadway, people forget that it is about race relations, and this has led to some of the negative reviews of the 2021 West Side Story, because it did include Latin American and Puerto Rican actors and actresses for the Puerto Rican characters, and people didn't like that. A lot of fans didn't like that. They also included a lot of Spanish that wasn't originally in the play and wasn't originally in the 1961 movie, and people were upset with that as well. And so there are a lot of criticisms about the 2021 movie being more woke, because it talks about race relations, even though the original musical was also intending to do that. It just did it really poorly because it didn't actually hire non-white actors. But because we did hire non-white actors and we included more parts of Puerto Rican culture, people are saying it's too woke. I think it personally made the musical better, because I feel like the musical did more of what it was intended to do, which was to bring up race relations while mimicking Romeo and Juliet. And I quite enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was a lot more fun. I thought they were able, because of the technology difference, because one was made in 1961, one was made in 2021, the technology difference, they were allowed to have a lot more fun with it and travel to more spaces and do larger dances and include more people and include more aspects of New York life. and I just thought that that added a big depth to it. Some people don't agree. People think that the choreography and the smallness of the set is better, but I personally liked what they were able to do now with the technology that we have. I think the only thing I didn't like about it was just that because it is based off of Romeo and Juliet, I had a hard time taking like the principal plot of the love story seriously, because it's like all of this terrible tragic stuff is happening, and but then you realize that this is happening in the span of 2 days, and so she's about to run away and marry someone that she met yesterday, and that like cheapens the whole like depth of the love story. And it's never once brought up, and this is just a criticism of the whole musical, not just specifically the 2021 movie. Never once in the entire musical does someone say, oh, you can't marry someone you just met, or you can't fall in love with someone you just met. It's always, you can't fall in love with them because they're white or because they're Puerto Rican. It's never, oh, you just met this person, how do you know? And so I feel like I would have wanted something like that, but at the same time, it's what Romeo and Juliet was that they met, and then like 2 days later, everybody was dead because these two kids fell in love. Just logistics-wise, one of the things I like about this, which I don't like about a lot of other musical movie adaptations, is that they cast for prestige, they cast for the names, they don't actually cast for skill. But they didn't do that in West Side Story. In West Side Story, they cast a lot of Broadway actors. I'm not gonna say lesser known Broadway actors because they're well known in their circles, but I mean for like the whole of musical theater, they're not like the top 10 like musical theater names. But they did cast a lot of Broadway actors and actresses to fulfill the roles of West Side Story. So it felt nice because all these people were like trained Broadway singers and dancers and actors, except for the person who played Tony, who was like the main character. He was the only one who was not a Broadway singer or performer, and he was really good. Ansel Elgort was a phenomenal actor in this movie, in my opinion. But I felt really bad for him. He's a great singer by himself. By himself, he's amazing. You put him next to Rachel Zegler, who is playing Maria, and she is, you know, a trained Broadway singer. She has the voice of an angel. If you haven't heard her, you probably should, because it is beautiful. She's beautiful. She brings so much emotion and depth to this role. And when you put him with her, it's like, please, please don't embarrass yourself. Stop singing now. And that's not his fault, you know. That was a directing choice, a casting choice that they made. And I always feel bad when they make casting choices like that, because it's like they could be a really good actor and a really good dancer, but if they can't sing to the same caliber, it's very noticeable, and you kind of just feel bad because like they almost set you up to fail. It's the same thing with the Dear Evan Hansen movie, where it's like they cast people who weren't trained Broadway singers, and then they put them up against Ben Platt, and it's like, of course it's gonna sound off because you're having regular people singing with Ben Platt. You know, like, why would you? It's like having like someone who skates recreationally up against like an Olympic gold medalist figure skater. Like, yeah, they're good at what they do by themselves in their own community. You put them on a world stage, it's not gonna sound right, not gonna look right. So that was my only criticism. And of course, the controversy around casting Ansel Elgort, because he does have sexual assault allegations against him, and there's only 2, and it was swept under the rug pretty quickly, and I don't think anything legal ever came of it, but there were a few protests about casting him as Tony because of the sexual assault allegations. But aside from that, I thought he was a really good actor. I thought he was really good in the role. A lot of people didn't, though. A lot of people thought that the acting in West Side Story was really bad on all parts, not just his, and that it was really stiff. And I think they just expect something different. A lot of people who were commenting on the acting pointed this out, is that this musical was created in 1956, and the acting standards were different then. So it was created for literally in a different time, for a different audience, for a different set of standards than we have now. And it's hard for that to translate over time, because this is like a 70-year difference from when this was first written to now. And so I feel like it would have been harder to connect to an audience today just because of that large time difference. Like, West Side Story is remembered as a classic musical. It's not like Hamilton or like Dear Evan Hansen or In the Heights, where it's music of a genre that you can relate to. It's not of an issue that you can relate to very much on the surface. It's basically being redone to say, hey, we can get it right this time, like race-wise and ethics-wise, I believe is why they did that. And because we were just making a lot of movie musicals over the pandemic, like we released so many of them. And so I feel like also it's easy to compare between, because we released so many, like what they got right and what they got wrong. Every person, every adaptation is different, and they approached it differently. And so I think Steven Spielberg did a really good job recreating West Side Story, but I feel like we expected too much. It's like one of those things where it's nostalgic to watch, and so you watch the original and you're like, oh, like as a kid, or you watched it growing up and you're just like, oh my god, this was so good. And then you're presented with it again and you're like, this is bad. But you don't know if it was like, if the story was shit to begin with, or if this new adaptation is just bad. And I think quality-wise, storyline-wise, it was good. The 2021 version was good. I think West Side Story is just a story that was kind of bad, because it is Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet's not that great of a story, you know. It's taught as a classic, but if you actually go back and read it, you're like, wow, these are like a family that's feuding for reasons we don't understand. And now these kids are falling in love in the span of 2 days, and everybody's dead because everybody's overdramatic. That's it. That's the whole thing. So it's not a plot, it's not a story that's really that good, you know? And so I think just putting it to newer audiences that understand that doesn't have the same impact as putting it with the audiences it was ever intended for. I think it is a beautiful, beautiful movie, but as a love story, it's very hard to take seriously. Now, for the part that I love the most about it, the depictions of race relations and social status within the movie were absolutely brilliant. And they portrayed it so well. And so like while the main plot was this love story, there was an underlying plot about race relations and social status, because it is depicting a historical time. Also, the historical costuming was spot on. Like, that was beautiful, and I know they won a lot of awards for it because it was good. But no, so basically, the whole thing between the Jets and the Sharks, and this is backstory that wasn't included in the original 1961 movie. It was backstory that was added for context in the 2021 movie, is that they are in this poor neighborhood of New York that's going to be torn down to build the Lincoln Center. And they've already torn down all but like a few blocks. And the Jets and the Sharks are fighting over those last few blocks, basically. And so, as I said earlier, it's white people versus Puerto Ricans, and but both are kind of in the same position, if that makes sense. Like, social-wise, they're kind of in the same position. And this is established early on when the police officer has to break up a fight between the Sharks and the Jets. And I hate the police officer, but like, I love his part in the movie, because it really shows that it's not as simple as white people versus people of color. There's more nuance to that, because, you know, initially the policeman sides with the Jets, the white people, and he's like, oh, you know, go back to work, guys, just, you know, leave. And so the Puerto Ricans all leave, and then the police officer, who's also white, by the way, turns to the Jets, and he's like, you guys are the white people who failed. You know, he's like, the Italians, they made it, they left. The Jews, they left. The English, the European, you know, the English, they left. But your families didn't. They didn't make it. You guys are the Caucasians that failed. And that's when you realize that that distinguishedness, like that distinction of types of white, still matters in the 1950s. So even though he's more likely to side with the white people versus the Puerto Ricans, he is not on the Jets' side, because he still looks down on them because they're the wrong type of white. And so that was really important to establish, is that they have that commonality of being poor in New York, but they just can't see it. But also they're struggling for different reasons. Even the police officer said, he's like, you guys, you know, you're the Caucasians who failed. You're not trying to get out. You don't want to leave. They're at least working. You know, the Puerto Rican families, they are working. They go out every day. They open their stores. You know, they go and they get food for their children. They try to make nice clothes for themselves. They are trying to make something here, but you guys aren't. So it's like, even when this whole town is destroyed, you know, this whole block is bulldozed over and made into this new thing of a shiny apartments, they at least will have jobs here, but you will have nothing. And so it's the acknowledgement that, like, yeah, I may be more biased towards these white boys. It's a recognition that the Puerto Ricans are actively working harder to make their lives better, and that the Jets probably shouldn't be messing with them, because ultimately they cannot win. And the Jets know this, and that's why they resort to using a gun later, or at least bringing a gun, since the gun wasn't actually used by them. Because they know that ultimately, even though they think they're tough and they think they're better, they know they can't win. And this whole talk of, like, race relations and social class is continued with the advent of Rita Moreno's character as Valentina. So in the original musical, there's a character called Doc, and he has this drugstore, and it's like a neutral ground for the Sharks and the Jets, and they all meet there and they talk shit, but they can't have any fighting in the store. Well, instead of Doc, they have Valentina, who is Doc's widow, and she is Puerto Rican. She's played by Rita Moreno. She's Puerto Rican. But Rita Moreno, if you've seen her, is a light-skinned Puerto Rican. She's white passing, aside from her accent. And so she offers this perspective, because she's the one Puerto Rican that all of the Jets respect. Because, and she even states this, I married a white man, they think I'm white now, but that's not how it works. And it's interesting to have her character, because she offers a perspective on what Maria's position would be like in the long run, because she is Maria in this situation, and her Tony is dead, and she lived a happy life with him, and now she's here, and so she's like, you know, she's watching this love story unfold between Maria and Tony, specifically from Tony's perspective, because she's never once met Maria, you know. She's hearing about all of this from Tony, and she's just like, dude, do you think you could, like, ask her to coffee before asking, you know, for her to spend the rest of your life with you? Like, Jesus, chill. And she's just like, it's not going to be easy, you know, for her. And he never really thinks about that. And that's a big thing that I liked, which maybe I shouldn't like, and maybe a lot of people don't like it, is that Tony is an inherently flawed character, and that inevitably leads to, like, all of the deaths that are in the movie. Is that Tony used to run the Jets, but he was in prison, And so then he gets out and he's like, I'm gonna be better. I'm gonna make a better life for myself. I don't want to be a part of it anymore. And actually, it's ironic because something Riff said in the beginning, he's the new leader of the Jets, was that once you're a Jet, you're always a Jet. You know, even if you think you can leave, you're not. You're always part of it. And that became true for Tony because he tried to depart himself from the Jets, but ultimately his anger, his attachment to it, led to the mistakes that were made and his misunderstanding of race. And that was the big thing, is that race was and is the big dividing issue. I mean, not like straight up racism. It's like, oh, I think you're less than me because you are Puerto Rican. It's the, you are an other from me and therefore a threat to me. But that lack of awareness of race is what bred that division and misunderstandings and hatred. Because, and even Maria tried to tell him that, she's like, you ought to understand that Bernardo does what he does because he feels like he has to survive in America. You know, it's very hard for him in America. He doesn't have the same, you know, luxuries and social status that you guys do. And Tony will get mad at her and be like, yeah, well, Riff has had it at, you know, been at odds with the universe since the day he was born. Nothing's ever been kind to him. He doesn't get that even though the struggle is similar, the struggle is different, you know? Because Riff, yeah, his parents were shit and he was raised poor. He doesn't know how to socialize correctly because of his shit upbringing, and now everything that he knows in life is being torn from him and he's panicking because he doesn't know how to do anything, and probably a lot of internalized toxic masculinity and so on and so forth. You know, that's bad and all that. But you have Bernardo, who has now come from a different country by himself, because it's established that, unlike in the 61 movie, their parents are not there. So now he has to figure out how to make it in America when everybody is trying to make sure he knows that he's not going to make it. And as well as take care of his girlfriend and his little sister, and basically he's taken on a parental role both within his immediate family and relationships and in the whole of the Puerto Rican neighborhood, to make sure that they get what they deserve in America. And so it's like, maybe he didn't come from a poor background, you know, maybe he didn't come with all the hardships that Riff did, but he comes with different hardships just because he does not look like Riff. He comes with hardships that Riff is never going to have to face, and that's something that Tony and the rest of the Jets don't understand, even though the Sharks have been trying to explain it to them, you know, throughout the entire movie, including Valentina trying to explain it to them throughout the entire movie, that it's like, yeah, you guys are poor, but you're not going to have to deal with this. And I feel like that's something that is echoed a lot even today, trying to explaining like systemic racism and socialized racism. It's like, yeah, no, you can have hardships, but they will be different hardships, and one doesn't make your life harder than the other. One doesn't mean that you didn't struggle or it invalidates your struggles. It's just they're struggling differently, and that shouldn't be a threat to you. Now I want to talk about Ariana Du Bois' character, Anita, which was Rita Moreno's character in the 1961 movie, but now it's Ariana Du Bois. And because I love her as an actress, she became famous through Hamilton. She played the Bullet, and then she was in The Prom, and now she's in this. And she's an Afro-Latina actor, which is cool because I feel like that's kind of what they were going for with Rita Moreno's character, but Rita Moreno is not Afro-Latina, she's just Latina. And so it's nice to have an actual person with darker skin and that Afro background in the role. But anyway, no, she is a great character, and I want to talk about her because she undergoes a really interesting arc, and it's going to talk about my two favorite songs in the whole thing, which is, the first one is America, and that's like her big song. It's one of the big songs with the big dance numbers, which apparently she performed where she had a sprained ankle, but you can't tell, and I feel like we should give her more props for that. Like, I know she won an award for it, but I feel like she should get more of them. if that makes sense. But no, so Anita is Bernardo's girlfriend, and but like it's more than that because they talk about getting married and everything. But she has a very different idea of a happy life than he does, and that's what prompts the song America. And it's one of my favorite songs because I love anything that criticizes America. And how the song works is that she and all the women will be talking about all the great things that they have now that they're in America. And then you have Bernardo and all of the men talking about the struggles they have that go along with it. But in the end, they're all still happy and they love each other and they're gonna stay in America. And I like that because she has such like a hopeful vibe, and she's not stupid, you know, she understands the hardships that come with it. She just thinks that the benefits outweigh the struggles that she and her family and her community is going to have to go through. And I could go and like recount all of the lyrics to you, but the interesting thing is that I feel like a lot of people, especially the ones who think that the inclusion of Latinx actors made the movie too woke, didn't like America, or would like try to say that it was altered or changed to represent woke America. But what I love about it is that the only line that was changed between the 1961 version and the 2021 version is that in the beginning, Rita Moreno sings that Puerto Rico is sinking into the sea, and they changed that to just being like, oh, they grow a lot of pineapples. Probably because Puerto Rico has been through quite a few hurricanes and might be sinking back into the sea, and they didn't want to bring that up. But every other like criticism and joy of America has been unaltered from one version to another, and I like that because that song was written originally in 1956 by a white man, and I feel like that means a lot, that a song can translate so well, like 70 years, and that person, Stephen Sondheim, had enough like race awareness to write a song like that. So that, but also it's sad that it's still applicable to today. And that brings me, I'll get back to Anita, that brings me to my next favorite song, which is G Officer Krumke, which is sung by the Jets minus Riff, who are all in the prison county house, like the jailhouse. And they're talking about like, why could they possibly be bad? And it's all like jokes and fun, but it's bringing up like the valid criticisms of like why they act the way they do, like, oh, their parents are on drugs, their parents don't care, leave them alone, don't give them enough things to do. And it's like, then how does society deal with them? Well, society says we're lazy, society says that we need to do this, that we need to do that, so we're somebody else's problem. We're never, like, no one's ever gonna fix us because it's just one thing to another. Our parents don't want us, we get, you know, so we go out, and the police don't want us, so they send us to the doctors, and the doctors don't know what to do with us, so they send us to these people, and these people don't want to deal with us, now we're on the streets. And it's a very valid criticism of like mental health and the poverty and hardships in America, and I like that because it's sung one after another. It's America, and then it goes into G Officer Krumke, and they're like parallels of each other, because talking about why are each of the groups doing what they're doing, and they're very different reasons, but both are very valid reasons. And it once again breeds that underlying, like, you guys have so much in common because you're both getting royally fucked over by America as a country, that you guys could unite and be so powerful, but you can't because of the little petty differences of socialized racism and this individualistic, you know, tendency that America breeds in people. Yeah, and then anyway, back on to Anita, because she sings all the hopeful parts and all the things that she loves about America, and then Bernardo dies, and no one's on her side about it, you know? because Maria still loves the person who killed him and is gonna leave, so now she's gonna be all alone. The person she loved is dead, and then she goes to try and kind of offer like a peace offering to the Jets and to Valentina, and they all try to rape her. Not Valentina, but like they all try to rape her. And so finally at the end she said, all I wanted was to be American, but I'm not American, because you guys are all just rapists. You know, she's like, I am Puerto Rican. And it sucks because she had such hope. She was such a hopeful and vibrant and strong person, and they ruined that for her. And it's heartbreaking because she might have given up on her dream of becoming a fashion designer and living her life out in America, because now she has nothing left. Yeah. Also, another addition to the attempted rape scene is that there are, because everything's parallel there, because they basically are the same groups, but with different backgrounds and motivations. Riff's version of Anita, so there are two Jet girls, and when the boys are deciding to try and like rape Anita, they are both crying out, don't touch her, don't hurt her, don't do anything, and they're trying to help, and they get shoved aside, but they're still like banging on the door trying to help her. And that was an inclusion in the West Side Story 2021 that was not in the 1961 movie. And I think that once again it brings up that like intersectionality that exists that makes it way more realistic than I think it was. Is that even though they hate each other, you know, the Sharks and the Jets, they hate each other, Anita and these girls don't like each other, it was that solidarity of this is wrong, because this is no longer a us versus them, this is a women's issue of being taken advantage of by men who are more powerful than us. And while it's a harrowing scene to watch, it's an inclusion that I love because it shows a fundamental understanding of intersectionality. And I think that is another reason why I liked West Side Story 2021 better than the 1961 version, is because it does what the 61 version did, but better. You know, it talks about the intersectionality of all of these different identities, and it portrays them well without being, I think, ultra preachy, at least not preachier than the original, you know, musical was. And it talks about a lot. Does it make the plot any better? No, because it's still just Romeo and Juliet, and I can't take it seriously. But I feel like every other aspect was greatly improved by just the fundamental understanding and progress that we have made as a society. I feel like this is gonna be an extra long video, and for that I am sorry. I just had a lot to say about West Side Story, and if you agree with what I said, please comment below. If you disagree, please comment below. If you have other insights that you think I may have missed. I know they also included a trans character, which wasn't trans in the original musical, but they made it trans in this version. I would have discussed it, but honestly, it wasn't as big of a deal or plot point that I felt like needed analysis as much as the rest did. But I do think it's cool that they included a canonically trans character played by a trans actor. But I did think that it probably was not as necessary as the rest of what I talked about in the analysis. If you disagree with me, please comment below. That being said, have an incredible week. It's finals week, so just make sure that you survive the week. Maybe take time to watch West Side Story if you haven't. I highly recommend. That being said, so long, thanks for all the fish, be excellent to each other, and party on, dudes.